Hello and welcome to another live broadcast from the Ottawa Business Journal. I'm Michael Curran. Today's show is titled Putting Data at the Center of Your Business. You know, there's a saying that goes something like this: without data, you're just a person with another opinion. You know, think about it. Really, data is at the center of the business decisions we need to make these days. And right now, a lot of companies understand the importance of data, but they're simply overwhelmed by the sheer volume of it. I think I can say that from our perspective here at the Ottawa Business Journal. Many companies lack the strategy and the means to leverage that data. And whether you're wondering where to start or how to get more value from the data, today's show is for you. To help us explore all of this, we've got a great guest, a true expert in this field. Please welcome the Director of Internal Projects for Spieria, David Kretz. Hello, David.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
This is a topic I think that a lot of people struggle with, David. So I'm happy to be here and happy that we're going to share your expertise with our audience today. But let's just start by learning a little bit more about Spiria. What is the company? What does it do?
Sure, I'll talk about Spiria first. Spiria is a service company. We engineer digital products that simplify the world. Uh, Tersely, we build ideas for clients and help bring their visions to life.
That's good. And tell us about your role at Spiria, David.
So I'm the director of internal projects here. We manage a collection of in-house projects that contribute to the process development of our internal teams. We onboard and manage a dynamic team of developers, so we make sure that new hires coming in understand our tools so that they're ready for client projects. We validate and develop internal data collections and the reporting initiatives for a lot of the internal teams here at Spiria. And we also run internships from time to time, looking for those diamonds in the rough to help us move our client projects forward.
Good for you. Always looking for new talent. That's so important these days. And David, data might is one of those subjects that's a little bit nebulous, right? A little undefined for people. So just before we get into our discussion here today, I was hoping you could give us some quick, like bullet point almost examples of what a data project could look like.
Sure. We'll start with complete concussion management. So we helped healthcare professionals provide better care for concussion patients and further their research. So we provided a space where all of the healthcare professionals could be looking at the same data so that there was no overlap of information coming to the patients. EventCo was an accelerated decision-making process that helped the event organizers and the promoters with an immediate return on investment, an immediate ROI. Jitney Trade was one of our clients where we helped improve their user growth by developing a secure and financial platform for one of their for an online investment broker, not one of them, for an online investment broker. So this company was purely data driven and very much a culture around data. Shutterstock, as you might have heard of, we helped improve trend tracking and supply management for a sales analytics platform that they were creating. And a final company that really aligns with what we're talking about today is SGS Co, which Spiria helped reduce the processing cost and the manual operations for their brand asset management platform by standardizing their processes. So we had to partner up with one of their third-party data platforms to make sure that we were trained up and were providing the right kind of service for their needs.
Great examples. By the way, I should point out that some of those examples are on your website. So if you want to, if viewers or listeners want to learn more about those, you can visit the Spirit website. So David, we've, as we always do, set a little bit of an agenda, maybe I'll put it that way, for today's show. And we're going to walk viewers through it right now. So the first thing we're going to look at is creating a data-driven culture. And then we'll talk about the repeating nature of data innovation, data transformation, data analysis, and then we're going to take a little bit of a deep dive into a case study and end up with a Q&A session. So just a reminder for everyone watching on YouTube, if you're logged into the platform, you can ask questions. We've got a moderator looking out for those, and that will come at the very end of the show. So let's dive into this, David, and we're going to talk about creating a data-driven culture. Tell us about this.
Okay, so before we jump into what it means to be a data-driven culture, I think it's important that we take a step back and we sort of look at what does it mean to be a data-driven person or an individual. So being data-driven means that you make decisions, whether good or bad, hopefully strategic decisions, and those decisions are based on data analysis and interpretation. You want to be making inferences from your data. Being data-driven also means that you're using or building tools, you're cultivating abilities, and being a part of cultures that act on data. So as humans, we inherently are attracted to data, and data helps us understand the world around us. So it makes sense that culturing that attraction can have a positive impact on our businesses when done correctly, of course. So let's move now into, how do you start creating a data-driven culture within your organization? So the key aspect of creating a data-driven culture is the process of making data accessible to as many people as possible in your organization, internal and external. So, employees and clients are just as important to engage with data. The reasons why you want to make that data accessible is so that you can ensure that your decisions are being anchored in data that's tangible, easily understood, and business focused. So your data needs to be shared here in different formats across all levels of your corporation. People at different levels will have different knowledge of data, and they will intersect with your data in different ways. So that being said, if you want to start creating a dialogue through data, you have to start at the top of your organization. It's really important that you start pushing data down so that people can relate to the data that you're trying to get brought back up into your organization. So right now, we'll quickly show here a tool that was developed by Spieria and managed through the internal projects team. It's our timesheet app, and essentially, this is how we allow our employees to communicate through to our clients. There's sometimes not a direct approach, so we need to create invoicing. We have to have PMs who are managing the teams. We need to know where people are spending their time, because as a service company, that's how we create revenue, having people working on client projects. So this is just an example of a scenario where a company has created a tool that supports the needs of their data-driven culture. So here, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, please go ahead. I was going to jump in with a question, but I'll wait, or an observation. But please go ahead on. I think you're going to talk about the
Sure.
engagement tool.
It's just important that a data-driven culture invests in the creation and the use of the tools to support the data needs across the organization.
Yeah, my observation on this, and I'm glad you started talking about people, by the way. So it's interesting to me that we're having a technology conversation, but you're saying people. I love that.
Absolutely.
And just reflecting on my own time in business, David, there's a concept that transparent companies, are more powerful because more
Mhm.
people are engaged. And what you're saying is there should be a level of transparency around that data. I love it. So in the timesheet, I'm just thinking about this. If an organization was sharing timesheets or workflows publicly, think about just through simple data, the level of unity or understanding that creates. So I love that example. We're going to talk about the repeating nature of data, which I think all of us realize that's where we feel overwhelmed because data never stops. But explain the concept of the repeating nature of data for us, David.
Sure. So when I put together this diagram, this data lifecycle flow diagram, the goal was to define a high-level flow that applies to the multiple areas of a data-driven business. Okay, so I wanted to have something that anybody who is starting to invest time and effort into a data-driven culture can place themselves and move forward in. Ultimately, this diagram also shows you that data in its own way is a cyclical process. It's something that you need to continue to refine and to engage with over time. And there's a real human element to this diagram as well. It really reflects how we as humans interpret data. We pull in through our senses. We store that information that's important to us, and then we do actions based on that data, and then we continue that cycle over time. So, talking about a data-driven culture, it's really important that you engage that aspect of the human element. So you want to make sure that your employees are engaged, that they feel important to your process, that you create documentation around the data, and you show how it's used. This this inherently creates trust in the retention of employee data. So not a lot of people are keen on being micromanaged. So you need to make sure that the outcome of that data really emits a positive value for the company. It's not just to keep an eye on you, but it's also to engage outwardly to clients. Your clients and your end users also want to be engaged, and you want to create business relations and continued use of your product. So it's really important to use data on the outwards side of your organization as well. So moving towards a data-driven culture really allows you to cultivate and utilize your data to create relationships and communication through your data. So this is really important, creating dialogue with your data. So this dialogue then creates actions between the parties, and those actions become more exact, they become more efficient when data is your underlying language.
And as we bring that diagram up, by the way, David, I like that people will be able to identify or self-identify where they're at. So keep glancing and trying for our audience today. Take a look at where am I in this process, and that will feed into today's discussion. The next concept we want to talk about, David, is data innovation. So
Mhm.
again, let's get into this.
So for me, I come from a development background. Innovation is one of the most exciting aspects of being data driven. You're creating something new through innovation. So today we're talking about being a data driven culture. I think the part of innovation that fits the most is the idea of building proof of concepts. Um, Putting time into solutions that improve on the products that you're creating. So proof of concepts inherently can have a high potential in creating efficiency. So whether it's the tooling that you're using or it's directly related to your product development, to get the most out of your proof of concepts, you need to make sure that they're visually lean and that they exact results. They have to actually show that they solve a solution for you. So this is critical about proof of concepts. So we'll jump into integration and delivery. We'll talk about proof of concepts in a couple seconds again. But integration and delivery, also in the same bubble as innovation, they tend to be tied together, and you tend to be looking at process and quality as you are working through integration and delivery. So here, tooling plays a super important role in enriching and promoting the right data to your various teams. So there's a diagram here. It's a burn down chart. I don't know if any of you guys use Jira, but as a software development company, we track our issues that need to be developed by our developers, and then we need to know where we're at in that time frame of a release schedule. So for us, a burn down chart is a really useful tool to share across the different levels of an organization, to speak that language of data and to ensure that everyone knows where we're at as we're progressing through a delivery. So whether you're using a tool like Jira or tracking your employee time through a custom tool or writing documentation in a wiki, it's important that in a data-driven culture, your organization is committed to these tools from the top down. Okay, the whole organization needs to embrace these tools, and by embracing them, you're also ensuring that the appropriate needs of those tools are available to support the teams using them. So I'm just going to step back quickly to the proof of concept here. So sometimes when you're developing proof of concepts, innovation, you can fall into a technical debt category. So technical debt applies to a lot of different business types, but in this particular case, a proof of concept where you go directly from innovation to delivery skips that integration step. So somebody creates this amazing value for your company, but then you throw it directly into production and you create this little divot inside your product quality. So it's really important to engage your technical debt, because if you don't, over time, you will build on top of that little divot, and more pieces of your production or your product will start getting less effective over time. So the amount of time it takes for delivery might increase because you're not looking at your technical debt. Excuse me. It's important to engage your technical debt, like I said.
Yeah, some good points there. By the way, we're getting some good comments. Thank you to Kevin Conroy, and thanks Jonathan Primo. We'll get to those comments, and I'll throw them at David in just a second here. And I get your point on technical debt. Like, you need to address those issues before, just to use that analogy, you're in a deep hole that you can't climb out of, and the project is at risk. So Great points there, David. We're going to talk about data transformation. We're going to go back and in just in a second, we'll bring up that diagram so people can think about that. But let's get into data transformation now, David.
For sure. So looking at the diagram again, data transformation, retention, and storage is a critical part of data in general. It can get a little dry here, and it can be chock full of buzzwords like infosec and DevOps or cloud, no SQL. I don't think that conversation applies to what we're talking about today. I think because we're looking at being a data-driven culture, the goal here is that you make the data that you're retaining available. So back to that data democratization. You want to make sure that your data is available, that it's secure, but it also is layered in a way that different levels of your organization can access the correct data for their needs. For us, we have employees. We give them access to their own data. PMs have access to their developer data. They also have access to the project data and the client data that they're managing, directors, so on and so forth. So by providing data to your organization layers, you're enabling each group in your structure to cultivate their own dialogues and actions through their specific data sets. So being a data-driven culture is really about enabling that dialogue between the levels of your organization and not siloing them. Your goal is to remove silos. You want your layers to be effective at talking with each other.
So this next topic is the one that really kind of appeals to me because I'm a business operator. So I want that data to make really smart decisions. So we're going to talk about analysis and visualization. This is the one that gets me excited, David. So take it away.
Sure. So we'll just take a quick look at the diagram one more time. So once you've got data, once you're retaining that data and storing it, then there's the step of analyzing it. So really, analysis here is the heart of being a data-driven culture. Proper analysis of your data is crucial to understanding inefficiencies of your product or your development processes. And it's also important in setting goals within your organization. So ultimately, this means that when you're analyzing your data, you need to start by asking the right questions. So most of you have probably heard about KPIs, key performance indicators. KPIs offer a vast collection of metrics to aid teams in understanding processes and to help organizations in finding value. So that means that finding the right KPIs can be quite easy. Google is your friend here. If you want to understand what layers should be looking at what KPIs, the research is very available online. So what the difficulty is with KPIs is that for your organization, you need to find the right targets, and you need to know when to course correct. So course correction on KPIs is really critical, and you need to know when to course correct as those values change over time. So I'll dig a little bit into KPIs in general. It's high level, but it's to get you started on the path to cultivating that data-driven culture through your data and creating the metrics that help you speak with that data. So when you are picking KPIs, again, you need to ask the right questions. So your goals need to be specific, but more importantly, you need to set realistic goals. So you don't want to set huge milestone goals on revenue throughout a year, because that can create a lot of stress with your company. You really want to show growth targets. So we're here and let's get to here quarter per quarter, let's say. And a good way to do that is to use ratios and ranges. So you make sure that you're rooted in your current state, and you say, hey, let's try and get 2% more revenue by the end of the third quarter. Okay, these are metrics that speak a lot better to people, and they're much more easier to digest within your teams. It's also important that you step away from vanity metrics. Okay, so there are metrics that will tell you stuff, but they don't bring value with their information. So things like site hits or daily downloads. You can create bots that can generate massive amounts of these data, but they don't really give you any value to the understanding of how people are using your product. So you need to focus on things like active site usage or referral rates when you're looking at finding metrics that bring value. Coming back to the human aspect of data, it's really easy to get quantitative data. Okay, numeric data, it's what computers do, right? They give us all of that data if we leverage them correctly. It's the qualitative side of things that really can be um, difficult to attain. So things like user feedback, your team's emotional quotients, usually qualitative feedback. It comes in a textual form, or it's sort of a bias if you're looking at emotional quotients. So you really need to spend time and put effort into going through this data, understanding this data, and leveraging it with your quantitative data. Both together are much more informant than one or the other alone. In KPIs, so I'm still working through the KPIs here. I've got a couple more points for you guys. In KPIs, you need to employ lagging and leading indicators. So things like revenue, profit, cost, these are all lagging indicators, things that change over time, but only bring you up to a certain point. When you're looking at leading indicators, and we'll take, for example, here, product quality. We talked about that earlier. Product quality, proof of concepts, creating negative product quality by pushing proof of concepts through. Product quality can tell you how much harder it will be to meet your deliverables and to hit your profit targets as time goes on. So the more complex your product gets, or the more technical debt you incur on your product, it can actually start making it harder for your teams to produce. So, you might have a fully green set of lagging variables, profit, cost. These are all saying, hey, we're going to hit our targets for the year. But when you start looking internally, as you start looking at the human side of things, you can start seeing that, okay, we've actually created a huge negative impact on our product quality. Our employee retention is going down, and we're not meeting the actual deliveries that we're promising against. So you really need to make sure that you're looking at both sides of where you are when you're looking at your KPIs and collecting groups of KPIs to understand value. And lastly, you need to leverage the trends over periods of time. So you want to know if your product is more useful during a specific quarter. You also want to find information about when you should be stocking shelves with your product, if that's what your business is about. For us, we want to know what kind of clients we engage with, what time of year specific clients tend to come to us for project work. You also want to look at your customer base and age groups and gender. Looking at all of this stuff can really give you a well-rounded vision of who is using your product and why they're using your product. And it's really important in terms of leveraging trends to look at your competitors as well. So if you want to look at yourself compared to someone else, your competitors are your best course of action. This can help you keep your teams on your toes, and also make sure that you're providing the right kind of environment for your team so that they stick around. So at the end of it here, KPIs at a high level, there's a lot of stuff to think about. There's a lot of questions to ask. It's really important not to overdo it. You do not want to jam a whole bunch of KPIs together, because that's what your research brought up in Google, and just drop that in as your dashboard. You want to make sure that you're keeping things simple, to the point, and again, I can't stress it enough. You have to start with asking the right questions.
Yeah, I like those points on KPIs. So critical to determine what you should be measuring, and I like your point on vanity metrics. Right, we can get wrapped up in page views or stuff like that, but it's you need to be looking at the more important metrics. So, David, I think we're going to take a look at a sample project. So I feel like we've given people a crash course, like in just 20 minutes. It's incredible.
Sure.
Of thinking about data, how to be more of a data-driven organization. Let's get into that sample project a little bit, so we can bring this home for people.
Sure. I would really like to touch on, before we get to that case study, on documentation.
Oh,
and,
yes,
and
yes.
how important documentation is.
Yes.
So I'm just going to quickly pull up a slide here. And this slide is a flow of how we calculate utilization within our company. Obviously, keeping people working on client projects is a critical part of our revenue creation. And it's not here to scare you. Documentation isn't evil, and it can be complex or simple. It's just to show you that there are multiple ways for you to create dialogue with your data. So here I can talk to the higher levels about why we've done this calculation, and I can also share this with employees who want to know why we're retaining their data through timesheet. and the needs that we have as a company to make sure we keep being a company. So it's really important here that you engage as much as you can, and documentation is a real key part. So you want to communicate why and how data is important, and also ensure that for people who are interested in getting into the dialogue with data, that they have stepping stones into the organization at the different layers. So you want to help others understand those key metrics and their importance, and provide a language so that the engagement between layers becomes more concrete, and that these layers can then start doing actions as a result of their understanding of this data.
Thanks for that last point. That was an important point. So let's now move into that sample
Yes.
project again
No
to bring things home, so to speak. David, tell us
Sure.
about this project.
Sure. So, looking at a recent case study here at Spiria, we had a client that had a pre-existing machine learning project. They had already built a proof of concept, and they came to us looking for a rebuild of that proof of concept to make it a little bit more product quality, let's say, and allow it to expand with the needs of what they were hoping to do with their machine learning module. So this project really touches across the whole part of that diagram. It's kind of the full Monty of the types of projects that we do here at Spiria. The innovation part had us, working with the client to understand the new requirements that they had, and also the working requirements that they had in their proof of concept to really build out a fully potential project for them. We also did the integration step and the delivery step. So that top part of the diagram was a fully encompassed part of the project work that we did. The project was meant to allow patients and doctors to interface with each other. The machine learning project was built to help doctors understand diagnosis and to help with prescribing, and to also make sure that a collection of doctors looking at the same patient weren't prescribing things that would complicate things for that patient. So there was a lot of data going through here. We also had a lot of compliance issues, so that data retention, storage, and transformation was a real key role that Spiria played with this client. We needed to make sure that the data was secure, that only the specific people that should see that data could see that data. And we had to go through a lot of documentation steps to make sure that we were meeting the compliance needs. Now, from an analysis and visualization standpoint, our goal here was to definitely make this look good. So it was being presented to doctors, it was being presented to patients, and we also had to make sure that the data was accurate. So, at that last step, we weren't necessarily doing a lot of analyzing of the data, but we definitely had to provide a critical role in the visualization of that data. So again, a full Monty project where our client was a data-driven culture, and they were creating a data-driven culture. It was a data-driven client creating a data-driven culture, and us as a data-driven culture were interfacing with them. And we really had to push that boundary of communicating with data as we grew with that client over time.
Very neat, very neat, and it did bring things back into focus there, David. Thanks for that. So we did have a couple comments. I'm just going to bring them on screen here. You don't really need to react to them. Just some interesting comments. Here's one: transparency where possible will lead to better collaboration, better decisions. I'm sure you probably agree with that one.
Absolutely.
Jonathan Primo chimed in saying, I'm addicted to data, literally spend hours playing around with data like Google Sheets, especially anything related to finance. He really likes Python Panda to play around data for the team.
Absolutely.
And this one's actual question for you. Dan Moorcroft is asking you, as a mid-sized organization using industry standard SaaS tools, as well as Workspace, what's the best canvas for data analysis? Thanks.
That's a great question, and the answers aren't always easy.
Okay.
It's important that you look for what's available within the tools that you're using. Office 365, might provide you with some Power BI licenses, based on the connection you have with Microsoft. There's a lot of external tools that can interface with a lot of these products. So it's really about, starting with what it is it that you need, understanding those KPIs, and then working with your teams to help find those tools that will support those KPIs. You might find that you already have what you need. Here at Spieria, Jira wasn't giving us everything, so we've created tools that interface directly with our tooling that allow us to create even more verbose reports for our clients. So it's really up to you as an organization to dialogue with the data that you need and to come up with the solution specific to your needs.
Good stuff. And David, I'm sure there are people watching today. So we've given them the crash course. We've given them a couple great examples. People out there watching or listening to us saying, I wonder what it would be like to work with Spiria. So maybe walk us through a little bit. If someone has a question, and we're going to give you contact information, by the way, in just a second here. But if someone has a question, what would the process look like if you're vetting this idea and scoping it out? How long would that take, and what
Sure.
sort of budget should they have before they come to a company like Spiria?
So initially, the starting point with Spiria is just opening the lines of communication. We respond to RFPs. We also respond to direct requests. We have an email link that we'll bring up at the end of the show here for anyone who's interested in throwing a project our way and seeing whether or not it fits the work that we do for you. In terms of process, we'll look at a new project. We'll see if it fits our delivery as a company, and then we'll start piecemealing it into buckets. Usually, we'll do a discovery step, which has us, okay. So first off, we'll talk about budgets. So, we want to. That's usually what most people want to know first. How much is it going to cost me? So, we do an initial estimate on that cost. If things go well, we work into a discovery phase. So that's us really getting into the nitty gritty of what this project is. Did we miss anything at the pre-sale step? Making sure that we're fully developing the requirements of the projects that we're about to develop for our clients. From there, budgets might change a bit, but it also gives us a chance to break the project down into pieces. So something that is $1 million budget, we might be able to get an MVP out at a smaller fraction of that cost, so that the client can then go and look for more funding for the rest of the build out of the project. So we're really about engaging at the start. We want to understand what you want, but also provide you with the best case scenarios that we understand from a development process to get you out the door and get your product in front of people. Budget wise, we go from 20,000 and up usually, but we're very open, like I said. So if something comes in and it's an interesting thing to us, and we want to engage with it, we'll start that discussion, and we'll get back to you for sure.
That's good. I really get the sense that Spiria, and I was reading a little bit about its origin story. It's very people focused, and really trying to get at those business challenges with great technology solutions. So, David, wow, time flies. We've come to the end of the show, but certainly we want to let people know how they can contact Spiria. So we'll bring up that graphic on screen, and you can give us a sense of how to contact Spiria.
Sure. So new project at Spiria.com. Any ideas that you have, wherever you are in your current business delivery, we're happy to have a conversation with you guys to help you move your product forward, help to create a whole new product in its own right. I also want to say thank you for everybody who joined us today. I hope that the information I've shared with you has been engaging, and I hope that it continues the exploration of a connection between data and culture within your own organizations.
Yeah, I think you did a great job, David. And it's about starting the conversation and thinking your way through the process. And again, I think the way I'll put it, you gave people a bit of a crash course here today, and hopefully, there's some people watching, and they're thinking, we are struggling with processing this data and determining, what are the right KPIs, how do we measure it, what's the life cycle of that, what's the visualization in that. But I think we all agree, David, maybe as a final thought, that just data can be a very powerful force in our companies today to make sure that we're making the right business decisions, correct?
Absolutely. And, just keep in mind, Spiria is not just software development projects. We can also help your company grow in these areas of being more data driven as well.
Well, David, thanks again. I'm going to say goodbye to you. Hope to see you soon. Great job. And as we wrap up, I just wanted to indicate that this is today was part of an ongoing series of live broadcasts available on replay too, by the way, that we're doing for local business people to help educate, inform, and kind of empower them to create modern, dynamic businesses that are very sustainable in all senses of the word. So a big thank you to Spieria for stepping up today and helping us with this topic. That's all the time we have for today. On behalf of all my colleagues at Ottawa Business Journal and our sponsors today, Spiria, thanks for joining us. Hope to see you real soon. Stay safe. Bye-bye.